Hi, Tony Selza here. Welcome to Zipline. You know, every once in a while I get to meet a business, find somebody who has taken an extraordinarily boring type of business and made it really interesting. And they've really created something brand new in a space that is very boring. And I'm kind of going after Casey Financial Planners a little bit, but Casey Marx has a new way of looking at financial planning, and really it's got a great story on how this whole thing got started. Casey, talk to us about your practice. What's the name and how you got started? How did this all start?
Well, first of all, Tony, thank you so much for having me on the Zipline. I certainly appreciate the opportunity just to share my story and talk about my business a little bit. I came from a relatively middle-of-the-run family, and my father passed away when I was 15 years old.
Oh, wow.
So I developed a very, very keen interest in economics from a fairly young age. Like I said, my father passed away. My mother had really no wherewithal of how to deal with finances, so her natural move was to invest with a fairly revered money manager where I grew up, which was in Seattle, Washington.
Wow.
The end result of that was essentially she lost about 80% of her retirement savings.
Wow.
So now she's 66, and she doesn't know what retirement means, essentially.
Right.
So when I got into the field, my uncle, long story short, was kind of a surrogate father to me. He brought me into the retirement advising field. When I graduated college, I wanted to work with something that mitigated the risk. You watch these shows and you watch these, whether it's a Squawk Box or Mad Money or whatever it is, they're all trying to mitigate risk. They're trying to diversify your portfolio, put you here, 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 and here to make sure that when the inevitable downturn does occur, you're not going to lose your shirt, right?
Right.
I wanted to work with something that took that completely out of the equation.
So no risk.
So what I do, no risk whatsoever.
Right.
So what I do is I work with completely guaranteed products, and the three kind of cornerstones of the products that I work with are 100% guarantee of principal, upside potential without any downside risk, and we solve the sequence of return problem, which is we guarantee an income for the rest of your life.
Wow.
Now, and I think it's a very powerful thing. You watch these advertisements on television these days, and there's a fairly powerful company right now that's running an ad where they go into a mall and they ask people, do you know if you have enough for retirement?
Right.
And nobody can
What
answer
is your
the
number?
question. It doesn't have to be that hard.
Right.
My job is I try to simplify everything. If I talk to you about the technology field or the marketing field, or if I talk to anybody about, I go talk to an engineer, they're going to use, verbiage that I'm not familiar with. And it's going to be muddled down and very difficult for me to understand and comprehend what they're talking about.
Right.
You get that when you're a consumer dealing with your own finances, because you might not know what a price to earnings ratio is. You might not know what a mortality and expense charge is. There are so many different words and phrases that are used explicitly in the field that as a consumer you can get incredibly confused.
$500 jargon word, so to speak, right?
Exactly.
Because I understand the meaning of it, I get to bill you another $500.
Exactly. And that's what we see time and time again in my job, and I've taken it upon myself and my partners across the country that host the same type of radio shows that I do. It's my job really to educate people and to simplify the process. It's taking the guesswork out of your retirement. It's making this will happen, not will this happen. Right.
And Casey, you've taken that to the degree where you've got a very unique name for your company, because I want to make sure we get that on, right? So what is the name of your practice, your financial planning practice?
Safe Money Retirement.
I mean,
so it doesn't get
it kind of just comes out and says it. Yes. And
it's
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, it just I think making it beauty and simplicity is kind of what you're doing. I mean, like people, I want to come back to something you said. And I really think that people don't understand this about money. It's like there are options. Warren Buffett said, like, the first rule of making money, right, is not lose money, right? And so you introduced the Buffett rule as the foundation of the way that you teach people how to invest. It's the whole foundation of your practice. Is that fair?
That's absolutely right, and I actually quote that on my show. I say, Warren Buffett's first rule of investing is don't lose money, and the second rule of investing is don't forget the first rule.
Right.
So you know, you can take on risk if that's okay with you. And if you're, I talk about red money and green money, okay?
Okay.
And I make it very simple. Red money is money that you know you can lose. It's okay. You're going to the roulette table with it.
Right.
And green money is money that you know you're going to have to survive on when you don't have the earning power anymore. In other words, you're going to have to take this money and utilize it as a source of income, pay medical bills, do whatever you have to do to survive and to maintain your quote-unquote, you know, lifestyle as it might be.
Right.
Right? The problem is we have a culture that has been inundated with the idea that we have to save in these, whether it's your 401k plan,
right,
whether it's an individual IRA,
mutual funds, stocks, bonds, variable annuities, what right,
have you.
Right.
These instruments that are quite frankly, they're just advertised. They're just shoved down our throats on
right,
a daily basis. And we've been inundated with this idea that we have to take on risk in order to get any sort of reward.
Right.
Because you've got, you know, we're looking at bonds right now, the 10-year Treasury note,
right,
30-year note. You've got CDs at terrible rates of return right now.
Right.
So we're almost forced into this risk trap.
Well, and not only that, you got boomers, right? That had, they lost. I mean, I mean, some of the crux of what we're talking about here is really generational. Like, I mean, like we don't teach our kids how to have a financial IQ, and we don't. And then we've had boomers that have been trained by the media that you know, so that for the last 50 years that just get into the stock market and you'll be fine. And they lost 50-60% of their net wealth, and that now they've got to try to take on more risk in order to get what they thought they needed to have.
Correct.
And they don't have a shot. So they're taking chances that they shouldn't be exposed to because they really don't understand the risk that goes along with it. Isn't that what you try to help people get their head around?
Absolutely. And you know, the sad thing for me is I do deal with folks that have taken these incredibly insurmountable losses, and they try, and I'm talking to folks who are 65, 70 years old that at one point, you know, had close to $1 million in savings,
right,
and now they've got 200,000 and they're trying to retire and they can't do it.
Right.
And so their mindset now is, okay, we need to up the ante on the risk.
Right.
We need to invest in small caps. We need to invest in things that are just outrageously, you know, risk dominant.
Right.
And these are the last things these people should be investing in because tomorrow the bottom can fall out.
Right.
And they'll have even less than they started with. Now, risk is good for a couple people, really rich people and young people. If you're young, you can afford to take on, you know, a little bit of risk, and that's why we talk about the sequence of return risk problem in retirement, which is basically if you've got X amount of dollars, any 5-year-old with a calculator can say, all right, we've got X amount of dollars, you know, we're saying we're going to live X amount of years, we'll pull from this. But the sequence of return risk problem is these folks have their money in something that's going to eventually go downward because it's a cyclical market instrument that they're dealing with here. And if they're taking a fixed income, it's going to be going downhill eventually, and that percentage is going to get smaller.